So let's talk about 5 tips for making your career comeback. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. Have you recently stepped away from a role? Have you been laid off? Have you closed a chapter in business, or do you find yourself in a moment of a professional pause? Today I want to talk about how you can use this opportunity to make a memorable and magnetic comeback for your professional brand. Because the next chapter of your career doesn't need to just be about pressing submit on your next job application or registering your next domain. You can use this opportunity to really take your personal professional brand to the next level. Let's dive into my tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to reclaim the narrative. What I learned from my time overseeing media teams is that they love to use the phrase control the narrative. And when it comes to applying this to your professional brand or your career comeback, this isn't about spin. It's about reclaiming your story, the story that is already yours, and how you want to position that story moving forward. Now, you might be experiencing a period in your life right now where there is a strong focus on recovery and healing from whatever it is that may have occurred up until this point. But just because you are experiencing that privately doesn't necessarily mean, unless you wanted to, that you need to communicate that publicly. Publicly, you can use the opportunity to reclaim the next chapter of your professional story with confidence and with decisiveness. You can communicate in a way that highlights that you chose this next chapter because it better aligns with your skills, your values, and your future goals. Something that really stood out to me when I read Dory Clark's book, Reinventing You, was this idea of connecting the narrative. Remembering that when you enter that next stage of your career, you still take your skills with you. You still take a lot of your reputation with you. So your fresh start in this new chapter doesn't need to just entirely be starting from scratch. Reclaim and connect the narrative to help your audience and your community understand your transition into this next stage of your career and why you are the best person to be entering into this next chapter. Number 2 is big rocks, small rocks. This was something that really resonated with me that I only heard about a few years ago. And it is this idea, which you may have heard of, which is a metaphor about when you are placing rocks into a jar. And if you start with the smaller rocks and you fill the jar first with all of those different rocks, then it means that when it comes to those bigger rocks and you trying to put that into the jar, you may not actually have room to put that into the jar. So a better approach is to start with the big rocks before you put those smaller pebbles into the jar, because those smaller rocks are more likely going to be able to fall around the big rocks. And the way that you relate this to your professional development is to create priorities that highlight what the big rocks are in your professional development plan. For example, depending on your activity at the moment, a small rock might be posting on LinkedIn every week or multiple times in a week. But a big rock might be starting to publish weekly LinkedIn articles, or it might be starting a YouTube channel or a podcast. It's showing that you are making that bigger leap. And this is what can be really interesting about big rocks that are actually public facing changes, because the big rocks, when you think about them being thrown into the water, for example, make waves. The big rocks signal to the marketplace that you are evolving, which I think is a big part of talking about career comebacks, because If something happened in your career that has been a challenge for you, it doesn't mean that your professional brand is broken or that you're broken. It just means that you are evolving. And the idea of taking control of your professional brand and the way that you might be perceived in the marketplace is a really empowering opportunity to be able to reposition your professional brand with poise and with purpose. But of course, your big rocks don't always need to be public facing. They can be the things that you are working on behind the scenes, the things that you are building in silence, those skills that you are developing without even announcing any of that to the world. What I personally like to do is take the approach of considering my big rocks in my 12-week plan. So if you follow this channel, you know I'm a big fan of the 12-week year concept from the book by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. And I try and make sure that I use that 12-week year goal setting period to keep those big rocks in mind. So when it comes to rebuilding your professional personal brand after a potential setback, remind yourself that you don't need to do it all at once. You can rebuild one big rock or small pebbles at a time. Tip number 3 is to prepare what I'm going to call your personal brand dossier. Now, this is getting all of your really important documents together to set you up for that next stage of your career. For example, if you are actively looking for a job, this means reinventing your resume, writing a customized cover letter, preparing the content that you will then use to update your LinkedIn profile. Or if you aren't planning to re-enter the traditional 9-to-5 market and work for someone else and you want to start your own business, for example, this is the opportunity to really focus on, for example, the content of your website, making sure that you spend time poring over that web copy document before you actually start to create your website and upload that content and continue to refine it further. So it's really just getting all of your documents in order to set you up for that next chapter. Don't just submit your old resume, your old cover letter, upload whatever you created in the first draft for your website. Actually take time to try and make those documents as first class as you can. Now, I don't want to say perfect, because if you think about being perfect, then this might lead into procrastination and not actually making any moves in the next chapter, but definitely as best as you can possibly get it to be able to enter this next chapter of your career with confidence. And when you are doing this, really consider how you can differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Something that really stood out to me when I read the book The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett was law number 11, where he says to avoid being wallpaper at all costs. And he really just describes how when you use cliches, for example, when you appear the same as everyone else in the marketplace, in whatever it is that you are trying to achieve in your professional life, then what happens is the people that are on the other end of that communication don't actually even register it. It's just wallpaper to them, because they have been habituated to just tune that out. They're used to seeing those phrases all the time. They're used to seeing things look a certain way all the time. So when you are constantly doing what other people are doing, you don't actually stand out in the marketplace. You're not differentiated in the marketplace. So when you are updating your personal brand dossier, then think about how you can differentiate yourself in the marketplace, avoid being wallpaper, and really make your professional brand pop on the page. And tip number 4 is to rebuild from the inside out. Your career comeback, or this next stage of your professional life, doesn't need to just be tactical. It can also be transformational. And one of the key ways that I think you can do this when it comes to any sort of pause or redirection that you have had in your career is to use the opportunity to really assess your everyday life, your routine and your habits. For example, what are the habits that up until now you have found to be really detrimental to your mental health or your physical health, for example, or your happiness? How can you use this opportunity in the next stage of your career to really assess how you can address those things and potentially remove those elements from your life, or have them be less prevalent in your life, or have mitigation habits that are going to help you to address what those things were? And alternatively to just addressing the things that potentially weren't going right, think about what has been going really well. How can you continue to integrate that into your life? How can you amplify it if you want to pay more attention to this space? Or as another option as well, what are the things that you always wanted to do that you've never been able to do? How can you use this opportunity to reassess what your ideal week looks like and see where those things could potentially slot in? So you can use this new chapter as your fresh start to make that ideal calendar for yourself work. And when you're doing this, keep in mind not just your professional life, but your personal life as well. You don't want to just be so focused on what your professional calendar looks like that you forget that you are this whole person. You want to create that ideal calendar where your professional life just slots in to the life that you live anyway. And how does all of your other interests and hobbies and different things that you want to pursue fit around your work? My tip number 5 is to debut your revitalized personal brand. I have a background in sport, and one thing that has really stuck with me from that period of my career is this idea of a new season. And what I like to think about when it comes to debuting the next chapter of your professional brand or your career is this almost new season moment. So it's that moment of when the team emerges and they are wearing the latest jersey for the season. And if you don't actually follow sport or care about sport at all, then you might think of this as, for example, when you are watching a TV show and the new season starts. You know, maybe it didn't end on a cliffhanger, but everyone actually comes back with this new revitalized, usually, version of themselves. Maybe their personal style has changed a little bit, maybe their goals have changed a little bit from the previous season. And what I love about this debuting your professional brand is that it makes you just have to put yourself out there a little bit. It signals, similar to the big rocks that we talk about, that you are making moves, that you are serious about the direction that you are going in. And there are a lot of ways that you can make this debut. Maybe people will notice, maybe they won't, but it's more about the confidence that it gives you. And some of the ways that you might like to do this is by, for example, updating your LinkedIn profile, specifically addressing maybe your headline, your banner and your headshot, and revitalizing all of those elements to bring this new energy to the next stage of your career. This could be updating your professional personal style. It could be updating your verbal brand and really elevating that to the next level of what it is that you want to represent going forward. This could be launching your new website. It could be launching your new product or service, or it might be communicating to your LinkedIn that you are open for work. Whatever it is, think about how you can enter this next chapter of your career with purpose and with poise to create a magnetic and memorable personal brand for your career going forward. Remember, your career comeback doesn't need to be just about picking up where you left off. It can be about returning to the person that you always authentically have been, or re-emerging as this bolder version of your personal brand. Your career setback doesn't define you, your response to it does. Think of your career setback as a moment to become the person that you were always meant to be. Thanks so much. If you want to learn more about personal branding, then subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.